You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Yet another morning in which we're staring at that same storm that we've been looking at for over a week now. It's Beryl, well into the Gulf of Mexico. 2 Recon planes are around the storm. I think one of them just finished, and and another one is in there right now, AF309. So we're going to get plenty more Recon data. What it is telling us though so far is that the storm has not started strengthening again yet, although it may be just about to. Obviously its satellite appearance has definitely improved in the last few hours, and it's starting to blow up a lot more convection. The big question is, just how strong will Beryl be when it reaches Texas? Hurricane watches and storm surge watches are in effect. And we've got tons of cameras that we can show you all along the Texas coast this morning. We'll be cycling through those in due course. But in the meantime, this is our live coverage, and the National Hurricane Center will be updating at the end of the hour with more info. My name's Nathan Foy here in the studio, and I'll be marshalling all of our other team members who are all in the room with us right now as well. We have Cesar, Declan, Maury and Jose with us. I think Orlando's on his way as well. Hello to all of you right now. Tropical Storm Beryl, and we still expect it to get to high-end Category 1 hurricane status. What's our take on it this morning?
So currently the system does seem like it is on its way to intensify, not intensifying yet. I do believe that it could be a little bit stronger, but that only depends if it moves towards the east. I'm thinking Category 2 status at most, maybe Category 3 status, but we'll have to see how east it moves. We'll have to see how the NHC updates, so it really depends on what they do.
Well, the best bet is for a high-end Category 1 at this time. National Hurricane Center still forecasting a 90 mile per hour peak just before it makes landfall, probably on Matagorda Island there at 1 p.m. or near lunchtime on Monday. Let's take a look at some of our viewpoints right now then. The closest camera I think to the storm is at South Padre Island, looking out to sea there, and it's actually a very pleasant morning by the looks of things there. And we can take a look at another viewpoint from the island as well. Still a few beach goers out there, but I would highly recommend not to go into the water as there could be some very strong rip currents underneath where it can catch people out. Here's another view from North Padre Island, looking towards the connector bridge to Corpus Christi. And again, a calm and pleasant looking morning there from that viewpoint. Now we go to Port Aransas, a little bit further to the northeast. This will be a location that we'll be looking at to be rather, we think, rather close to the landfall, but still, if it does switch a little bit further east, it may end up not being fully here, but a decent chance of hurricane force winds in Port Aransas. Rockport, of course, famous during Hurricane Harvey. It looks like it will move east of you this storm, but there once again another viewpoint this morning. Still plenty of people out and about and looking calm. And this is Freeport, which was running. Let me see if I can reload that. Near San Luis Pass, which is on the northern periphery of the watches at this time. There we go with that viewpoint there. Again, a beautiful cloudless sky up there in Freeport, but things will be changing soon. And finally, and this text is in red for no good reason. This is Galveston right now, looking at the viewpoint there from the pier, and one of the piers there, and again calm conditions and a nice looking morning there, but things will be all changed relatively soon as we take a look at the early visible and infrared blend imagery and just show you as we blow it up, zoom out the extent of the storm and the areas that it's going to affect soon. As you can see, it is still very much clear skies all along the coastal regions of the Gulf that we're watching, but the storm will be heading on its way soon. And if it does get itself established a good core, we could be looking at some substantial intensification. Now, we're probably going to be comparing this storm to Harvey all the way along, at least to measure it against Harvey to see how well it's doing. I can tell you that Harvey started rapidly intensifying when it got to 24 degrees north. It went from, I think it was 45 miles per hour to 85 miles per hour in about 12 hours. Beryl, of course, a little bit of a head start at 60 miles per hour, but its current position is nearly at 24 north. It is currently at about, well, it's just past 23. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens there. If we start to see real signs of intensification when it gets to 24 north, then really those are going to be very dangerous signs that this storm could be making a similar run-up to what Harvey did back in 2017. Of course, we're only comparing it in terms of its potential winds. In terms of its rainfall, we expect that it will be much lower. In fact, the latest model run has been suggesting that due to its quicker motion, it will actually drop less rain than what they were saying earlier. I think, pardon me, I think they're only now forecasting maximums of 10 inches, whereas yesterday we were looking at 12. So it's comparing to Harvey in that way is frivolous, because it really appears as though Beryl will not have even a quarter of what Harvey did rain-wise. But we're obviously very apprehensive about Beryl, and we wouldn't normally compare it to a storm like Harvey, but we just know Beryl's history. We know what crazy things it's already done. Its peak intensity, of course, stronger than Hurricane Harvey at its peak when it became a Category 5 in the Caribbean. However, no two storms are the same. Beryl is probably a bit smaller as well, maybe. Not sure about that anymore. But the general consensus on the forecast models is that it shouldn't get anywhere near as strong as Harvey. There is a lot of dry air there on that southwestern side, actually. You look at the water vapor imagery on the bottom right, and you can see off to the southwest and the south in general, actually. There is still quite a lot of a bit of a dry air mass around it. Interesting to see if the NHC will pick up on that in their update. Wind shear is going to be dropping. It's already dropping, of course, otherwise we wouldn't be seeing this big dome appearing, down to about 15 knots. And so it's going to be a couple of days as we watch this storm get closer to the coast of Texas. Again, we expect the landfall will be on Monday, and it will make a close approach to the coast of Padre Island during the early hours, well, even the late hours of Sunday, but the early hours of Monday morning as well. And then into the daylight hours, it will be making its final approach, possibly for Matagorda Island. Now, the NHC will be updating this cone in the next hour, and of course their advisory will have new data, but from what we're seeing, it doesn't look like we're getting much strengthening yet, although I just try and check something here. I'm getting an indication that they got 997 in the eye, but I'm not seeing actual evidence of that. Well, I say eye, it's not really an eye yet, but I think extrapolated Recon got 998 in the last pass. That's AF 309. They're currently along the south side of the storm, and I expect that they might go in for southeast to northwest shortly. On the northeast side, they got, in fact, you'd be surprised possibly to find out that when the convection was already starting up on that northwestern side, Recon flew in there. They didn't find very strong winds at all. They only found about 40, yeah, not even, just about 40 knots. Compared to the northeast side, which is mostly exposed right now, where they caught 50 knot winds and just a tad higher, maybe 52 knot winds, something like that, correlates to nearly a 60 mile per hour storm on the ground. And that pressure is somewhere in the upper 990s. Earlier dropsons had 999, and that's why that's the current official intensity. But they got extrapolated at 997 earlier, which the extrapolated doesn't mean actual. Usually we increase it just a tad. So I think 998 is a decent number for it right now, and possibly signs of just starting to turn that curve towards a strengthening process. We're here to take your comments and questions live right now. Mitch apparently says that we saw a truck on that Port Aransas stream and it's actually stuck. So already a little bit of drama. Someone's got their truck stuck in the water there. So that's a good start. Feel free to send in your comments and questions live, all in start your message with Force 13, all in text. People saying that we're doing a good job. Well, we appreciate that, and it's going to keep going all the way up until our job is done with Beryl. All right then, the meme god says, what is the cloud top temperatures right now? And there are a few, you know what, blowing up some pretty good cloud tops actually on that western side. Just got a reading of -83. So really impressive. Geodexillion says, what category will this get at maximum? Well, it's a tough question because there's still a lot of uncertainty. The theoretical maximum is the one thing that the CHP6 model is good for. It simulates the storm under zero wind shear conditions, and this and basically tells us what the theoretical maximum could be, and that is 145 miles an hour. Now, very unlikely it will get that high. Other models, including some mesoscale models, which usually overestimate the storm, but the HRRR, for instance, only calling for a peak in the lower 990s, so not that much stronger, probably borderline Category 1. Hurricane models, I think, are calling for generally Category 1 or 2. I'm sure we'll dissect that in a little bit with the team. But in general, the general consensus right now is probably high-end Category 1 or Category 2. Climatological suggestions tell us the same thing. Probably the best analog to Beryl right now is now Hurricane Dolly in 2008, at least for the rest of the track. Of course, Dolly turned left near the end and made landfall in South Texas as it was moving westwards. Obviously, this one's going to turn north instead. But in terms of intensity-wise, Dolly is quite similar. The only other decent analog is a very, very long time ago, a hurricane that moved pretty much north from here, a little bit more of a northerly track, although it did end up going through Houston. A hurricane in early July 1891, which was a 90 mile per hour Category 1. So basically, almost exactly what the National Hurricane Center forecast is saying is what that storm did in 1891. We're just looking at this camera in Port Aransas right now, where it looks like a truck has gotten into difficulty on the beach, so already getting some drama here in Texas in the early stages. The storm's not even here yet. It's a lovely sunny morning in Texas right now, and it looks like he's going to be getting towed out in just a sec here. So already a little bit of action. What speed is Beryl moving? It's about 13 miles per hour at this point. And is this the most powerful hurricane in June, July on record? Yes, to both counts. It got to, I think it was 150 and it was still June. I can't remember at which point it turned to July now. No, that was on the 1st, I think. I think in June...
130.
In June it got to 130, so by our stats, it's actually not the strongest storm in June. we still think it's orderly. But for July, it went on to become a very powerful Category 5. We estimate that it briefly reached 175 miles per hour. So that would make it the strongest July storm in the Atlantic. Is there wind shear or dry air around Beryl? We saw those images earlier, dry air hovering around the south and western sides. Guys, your thoughts on those potential limitations to the storm? Is it a factor?
Dry air is also something that hurricanes need to intensify, basically because hurricanes absorb humidity and heat and all these things to intensify. When there's lack of humidity, basically the system doesn't have enough fuel to intensify, despite the sea surface temperatures or even low wind shear, because humidity is one of the main is the main fuel for hurricanes or for tropical cyclones to properly intensify, and because it's energy at the end, and this kind of energy, it's what they need to intensify to stay alive as well. So that's good news that there's some dry air in the south. Not sure how much it will last. Of course, as it moves more to the north, the dry air will decrease as well, and has been moving slower too. So there are some key factors to take note for the potential rapid intensification if that occurs, of course. But yeah, I mean that dry air has been there like for quite few some days, and Beryl has been battling with them, but I mean has been defying all the predictions and all the models. So well, fortunately now it's taking toll.
And Bloxfruit said that the NAM model, which does have a track record for blowing up hurricanes way beyond what they should be, says a Cat 5 landfall in Rockport. I'm looking at it right now. I don't think it's quite a Cat 5, but it's actually 938 millibars. That's, if I recall, that's exactly what Harvey was. But it's unlikely to do that, thankfully, because we are still it is going to be a relatively quick process, and the storm shouldn't have that much time. You can see here this truck on the beach at Port Aransas, which got into difficulty. They're trying to tow him out right now, but they've not managed to make any inroads yet. So a little bit of a live event here that very early on in this storm. Again, it's still not anywhere near reaching land yet, but obviously there could be dangerous sea currents and rip tides out there, so definitely not to enter the water as this storm approaches, and then the conditions will start to deteriorate probably by overnight into early tomorrow morning in the very southern parts of Texas into North Mexico, which is also under a hurricane watch, let's not forget. And I think by the next advisory, which is on its way soon, we expect that we got like a 3-car convoy now that's trying to pull this truck out. So lots of people turning up. But by this update on the National Hurricane Center, it is possible that we'll start to see hurricane warnings or some kind of warnings get issued, because it is starting to get closer to that frame. We'll take plenty of questions during this hour of coverage. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. How much time does Beryl have to strengthen before landfall? Well, as we look back on the National Hurricane Center's cone, we've got until early Monday morning, or actually late Monday morning, I should say, as it gets closer. So we've got a little while. It's only Saturday, and again, it's still plenty of time. But of course, when we're talking about Harvey in the past, it strengthened really quickly from its slow start as it got back to tropical storm status. Basically, it got from 45 miles per hour to 85 miles per hour in 12 hours. So it was very impressive. maybe even less than that. I can't remember now, but I'm sure it was within 12 hours. So we'll be watching very closely later today to see if it can do the same, Beryl, and if it can get to 85 miles per hour by the time it reaches 25 degrees north, then we could be on for a major hurricane landfall. Did someone want to interject there just then? I think it was Cesar.
Hello, sorry, and I was pressing the wrong buttons there. No, but I mean, I do believe that Beryl has some potential to intensify. It has 2 days ahead of to take advantage of the conditions that are going to get better and better. And yeah, I believe it's going to be something interesting to see with Beryl. I mean, it's a really small system, has been moving slower as well, and the convection it's getting there too. It's looking quite good as well, and but fortunately, it won't be a similar thing that we saw 7 years ago with Harvey, since Harvey stalled for nearly 4 days or 5 days.
Yeah, of
In the
course that
same
part
location.
isn't happening.
Exactly. So
Just about the wind
rainfall
field,
accumulations.
I just want to, just using some recon data to try and figure out the wind field right now. It looks like the southwest side will be about maybe 30 to 35 miles now. Southeast side still looks like it has only, maybe not any tropical storm force winds on the southeast side, but possibly some weak TS winds about 60 miles out. Northeast is looking good, with storm force winds extending out maybe 100 miles, maybe more. Northwest also looking good, possibly about 100 miles out, according to recon data that we're getting right now. And they are still, in fact, they are now making an approach from the southeast. So they're going southeast to northwest, straight into the big bulk of convection. And looking at that, you would suggest or expect that the storms should contain the strongest winds in the northwest quadrant, if not now, then soon. That's where all that convection is blowing up there, all on that northwestern side. It is almost an exposed center of circulation right now. There's only a little bit of cloud over it. The center's around here. So it's almost an exposed circulation, and that could hold it back. Especially if dry air hangs around in that area as well. But they are flying in southeast to northwest, not getting very strong winds at the moment on their approach in the southeast quadrant, southeast to northwest if I misspoke just then. And we should get a new iPass shortly, and hopefully some drops on data which can tell us whether that pressure is decreasing or increasing. But we expect that it is probably just starting to decrease a bit more, and that means the storm is starting to strengthen again. But as of right now, still 60 mile per hour winds, pressure of 999 millibars as we continue to watch this stranded truck and people trying to pull it out of the waters there off Port Aransas. If you missed it this morning, a letter, that storm in the Eastern Pacific, it's dead. It's gone. And that's the start of the East Pacific hurricane season, starting with a whimper, and no real signs of any further developments, although there could be a weak system next week. Orlando, let's talk to you. We're looking at this viewpoint from Port Aransas, but I imagine you've been looking more at that recon data and the storm's appearance in general. What's your take on it?
I think right now it's definitely in those early stages of improvement. It was decoupled earlier, and it was exposed to a lot of mid-level dry air, and now it's finally beginning to feel that warmer Gulf water and the lower shear values, and moving further away from the Yucatan Peninsula, leaving room open for it to begin to organize again. So very interested in seeing how much it does that today, because that will determine pretty much what we'll be seeing tomorrow.
They're out. A job well done there on the beach. That truck has been safely pulled out in Port Aransas. I don't know how he got stuck there in the first place. But that's the first kind of incident from this storm, and it's not even hit yet. But that has at least been resolved. Certainly something interesting to be watching there on our live stream today. But the closest camera to the storm at this point is probably still on South Padre Island. We're looking out at it now. The sun's in the way, so we can't really see whether the storm's visible in the distance, but it should be, to be honest, it's probably just off shot to the right. If we were looking towards the storm, we might see it over there. But that's the view at South Padre Island, looking awfully calm. The waves moving in the distance along the shoreline, and a handful of people out there as far as I can tell. Generally pretty quiet, but this area also under a hurricane watch. The storm should pass by South Padre Island, but there is still some wriggle room. Again, this will update at the top of the hour, but this is the National Hurricane Center's cone. South Padre Island is still within the cone, and the far south up to the Rio Grande River also there as well. And on the eastern extent, it could be Galveston that gets the storm's eye, if it has one by that point. So we are still looking at quite a broad area that could receive the storm's landfall, and this is Galveston that we've been looking at. Oddly coloured in. It must have some kind of filter that we've added. There it is. That looks a lot more natural. So still not that many people out there over in Galveston. It is still quite early on this Saturday morning. Quite a lot of traffic out there though, and looking towards the other viewpoint there, looking I assume northeast along the rest of the shoreline, that seas are pretty calm. But Beryl is going to be trying its best to change that in the next couple of days. We do still expect that it will reach hurricane status, even though it is fairly innocuous right now. Don't ever underestimate Beryl. We know what it's been up to. But it certainly has lost its mojo ever since the final couple of hours before it made landfall. We think it made landfall on the southern tip of Cozumel and then moved inland over the northern Yucatan and rapidly weakened to a tropical storm down to 60 miles per hour, and still is, but could be some signs of intensification, and we look forward to this Recon pass, which is coming up hot right now. We should get it any time. So let's take a look at some more comments then. How much rainfall will Houston get from Beryl? At this point, it looks like I can't remember. It said on the left-hand side of the screen at various points. Of course, the storm could still shift, but I would say a maximum of 10 inches in Houston, although at the moment it looks like it could be half that. Are we glad the madness is over? Well, I mean, madness in the sense of the storm doing stupid things, yes. I mean, at this point, it's doing something that's pretty normal. You know, it's well back into the normal range, and like I said, it's quite comparable to Hurricane Dolly right now in 2008, another July storm. That one made a Category 2 landfall in southern Texas, and somewhat similar to Hannah as well back in 2020, which made a high-end Category 1 landfall in southern Texas too, but that one was moving a little bit, started further north and was moving more west, and actually dipped south a little bit before its landfall. Of course, Beryl's track will be much different, more comparable to a hurricane that occurred in early July 1891, the only other real comparison to this storm in climatological means, and that one went straight through Houston as well, as it weakened back down to a tropical storm. ECMWF is expecting a 105-mile-an-hour landfall in Texas. What are our thoughts? Well, we'll look at models in a minute, and we'll look at all of them and get back to you on that. Could wind shear increase due to the jet stream just 300 kilometers north of Beryl? What do you think about that?
What was the question again?
Well, they say that the jet stream is just 300 kilometers north of Beryl. I'm not sure that's actually true, but
well, it might be the subtropical jet stream. I don't know if it's the jet stream itself, which must be more north.
From what we hear, wind shear shouldn't be rising until near or after landfall.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense.
And what are the possibilities Beryl could intensify to a Category 2 or 3 hurricane? Most storms do from this position. At least get to minimum Category 2. So it's right along that border, 90, 100 miles an hour. It's a good forecast either way. And Beryl's legacy will live on, says Falco Lombardi. Beryl's south side has always been weak. Yep, even now, although this time mainly thanks to it being close to land earlier on. But it's at a disadvantage, that's for sure. Is Beryl going to have similar effects to Hurricane Gustav? Oh dear, that's some comparison, isn't it? Gustav was quite a bit larger, and I have really no idea as to how it could compare to that storm, but I expect not. Any lightning embedded in Beryl right now? Do we know about that? I've not been looking at that, but I imagine that someone will be able to find that info for us.
I can check that for you. But maybe, since the storm has a deep convection in the center with over minus 80 cloud tops, so possibly.
I have it on my screen.
So there's a fair bit of lightning in there right now. And those most recent ones are what, last 20 minutes?
Seems like, well, it seems like the lightning rate is like 38 per minute.
38 per minute? I had a hard time believing that. But
Well,
if it is,
I guess
then that's a
throughout
lot.
the entire storm. Throughout the entire storm. Well, now it's 30. I don't know what this means.
Let me try and find out. It is producing a fair amount of lightning. And it is... I can't figure out what it is in numerical numbers, but I can tell you it's a fair bit all along the northern side of it right now, which is continuing to pulse outwards. Anytime now we should have that next Recon pass data. So let's mosey on over to the model runs then now and see what we can see. Shall I do it, Maury? I've got the means to do it as well if you want. My screen's in a bit of a better position. I get a better zoom. All right then, the GFS model then first of all, which is what I always end up looking at first. There it is. And this is the 6C run this morning. And it starts off the storm at 1,002, 1,003 millibars, so still lowballing it. And then rapid strengthening right at the end. It stays pretty weak until the last minute, and that allows it to move a bit further west as well. That latest GFS forecast there takes it pretty much through Corpus Christi, 980 millibars, so that's probably borderline Category 2, and then inland and dies off super quick as well. So a very quick blow up right at the end there as it makes landfall near Corpus Christi. Euro, ECMWF, starts it off at 1,001, and then steady strengthening, which continues all the way in, and a landfall in a similar spot, a little bit further north, Matagorda Island by the looks of things, 981. So again, very similar, high-end Cat 1, maybe low-end Cat 2, moves inland, dies off quite quickly, but a much more steady phase than what the GFS is saying, but in layman's terms, a similar impact scenario. The CMC starts it off at 1,004, and I think it may have initialized that storm too far south, and it stays far south until the end, actually, where it dips northwards again, pushes northwards, and then landfall of 991 near Corpus Christi, closer to Rockport by the looks of things, and moving northwards. So that's probably a borderline Category 1 hurricane. High-end tropical storm, borderline Cat 1. Let's go to the hurricane models, the HWRF. I'm sure it's going to show something crazy. Usually does. Starts the storm at 998. Or is that 996? That first frame there's 1001. It's quite similar to what it is. And off it goes. Doesn't strengthen very much at first. Only by the time we get to, say, late tonight is when it starts strengthening in earnest. And there it is, into the 980s, 980 millibar landfall, sorry, 976. 976 and winds of 75 knots, so 85 miles per hour there. Again, very close to, I think that's at Rockport, isn't it? I'm just trying to get my geography back on track again. Yeah, it passes over Rockport there and then moves inland, mid-range category 1, and then moves in northeast turn quite quickly, ends up in Missouri. So again, a quick spin up at the end there, strengthening to reach hurricane status. HMON model. Now that's the strongest scenario. It initializes the storm again, 1001, then straight down to 993, so that's a little bit suspect. But overall, it is steady strengthening, and by the time it gets close to the coast of Texas, it's in the lower 980s, 970s, and it's a 970 millibar landfall and 100-mile-an-hour winds, so that's just into Category 2 range there, and the landfall occurs near Portland, inland, and then turning northeast, as expected. HAFS-A, these are the ones we're looking at closely as well, the new breed of models, and there it is calling for a 978 landfall with 80 mile per hour winds only. And that's a little bit further northeast. That's just off the eastern tip of Matagorda Island into the bay, just east of Port Lavaca near Palacios, and then moving inland north, and then eventually turns and moves over Louisiana. What? Nope, that's not right. Actually, that doesn't capture the center properly, but that's the HAFS-A. HAFS-B, which in my opinion has been one of the better models before it reached the Yucatan. Let's see what it does now. 997 it starts off at, close to what it is. So it could be a decent run this. And again, rapid strengthening only at the end. So it struggles for a while and then only rapidly intensifies right at the last minute. 972 millibar landfall, 80 knots, 90 miles per hour. That's pretty much exactly what the National Hurricane Center is running with, or was. We'll see if they get a new estimate forecast at the update. But from all of those that we're seeing there, decent consensus that it's probably going to be a high-end Category 1 hurricane landfall. And lo and behold, that's exactly what the National Hurricane Center are forecasting. Let's go back to that scene in the Port Aransas. They're all still there. There was a truck that got stuck in there for a bit earlier. Oh no, they're all gone now. It's updated. Still a few vehicles that have just perched up along the shoreline there in one of many locations along the Texas coast that's under a hurricane watch right now, which could get upgraded later on. We should have that recon pass by now, and they are maybe still not quite in the center yet, but they've just got an extrapolated 996.9, so that's a sign that this storm has started to strengthen already, but we've not got the full pass yet. They only got not even 40 knot winds in the southeastern side of the storm, so very weak on the southeast side. That's a flight level as well. Very weak on that side. So it's going to have to get that part sorted if it's going to get much more luck. We'll wait to see what the recon shows when it goes to the northwest side of Beryl, which I think is going to be very important here because it may well contain the strongest winds now. And we'll see if they get higher than the 50 knots that they've been getting at flight level previously. 52 knots I think is what they got before. So if we see an improvement there, if we get something like 60 knots, maybe even 65 knots, then that will be a sure sign that we're starting to see some strengthening, as well as hopefully an eye drop sond, or a center drop sond. It doesn't really have an eye properly, and we'll be able to possibly make a fuss over that data. National Hurricane Center will update at the end of the hour. We're here for this hour update here to talk about this storm. It's not going to be a full coverage, but we are going to be probably live for a good period tonight. I expect provisional. I don't know if this is going to actually happen yet, but I think we'll be going live tonight from 6 p.m. Central Daylight Time until 10, I think, is what we're going to be doing tonight. So just to keep everyone aware of our schedule. Let's see if we've got any questions right now. And Miss in the chat there, always thanking us, as you've been doing throughout the whole storm, actually. Really appreciate it there, and thank you. Could Beryl be somewhat similar to Nicholas in 2021?
Nicholas made landfall closer to Houston, so I don't know. That was a Category 1 storm, low end at that. And that system headed towards the Houston area and later curved into Louisiana. So I think it'll be a little further west than Nicholas. But I mean, I guess you could compare it to that storm, but it's not too similar.
Now, earlier on, we definitely couldn't rule out a Houston landfall. Let's see what the GEFS ensembles are saying now. What we're watching for here, as we look down to the bottom there, but I'm going to scroll up so I can get the slider. You'll see all these little red numbers that start to appear on the screen, and those are all the different ensembles. We have a ensemble of about 32 models, 32 variations of the model or something like that, and all of them run and produce different scenarios, and you get the ensemble mean, which produces the best forecast for the storm. Okay, so in general, it is still, the general rule is that the stronger storm will move north, and if it stays weaker, it will stay a little bit further south. So watch this. And in general, yes, the ensembles are homing in there. And I think we can just about rule out Houston for a direct eye pass. There's just one ensemble that moves it pretty much over Houston there. It's quite weak. But it looks like the models really are, the ensembles really are homing in on this particular part of Texas, the southern bend area. Near Corpus Christi up to Port Aransas and Rockport. So these areas, and I would say a little bit of a north end of that, Rockport up towards Matagorda Island, I think is going to be the center point here of this landfall. And obviously it would be better news if it was around Matagorda Island, a very sparsely populated compared to the higher populations around Corpus Christi to the south. Of course, as the storm moves inland, you've obviously got Victoria there as well, but it is a little bit inland, so the storm, according to some of those models, could be rapidly weakening just as soon as it makes landfall, and that could be induced by high wind shear as well, because it won't get very far inland before those wind shear values really ratchet up. So it could be a case of that, or it could just be a case of a serious core collapse, just like it did over the Yucatan. Now, I think we've got some more Recon, that they're in the center right now, and they surprisingly got some very strong winds.
47 knots.
No, much higher than that. They got 55 knot flight level winds in a very small chunk, just to the just in the southeastern part of the what would be the eye. Now, I don't know if that's suspect or not, because it's a very small spike, but they did get 55 knots.
Yeah, it doesn't show it on mine, so I don't know.
Oh, I thought it did. I was just looking at the screen a minute ago. I thought I saw the red, but it's certainly showing on my screen.
This is old data. That is old data, I think.
Well, all I'm looking at is current data. Definitely current. They got 55 knot winds, although SFMRs were only 35 knots southeast side, and they're now getting an extrapolated pressure of, they got 996.7. No, they didn't. Hold on a sec. Something really strange is going on here. They got 992.6 extrapolated, but it wasn't in the calm area of the storm. It was where those strong winds were.
What?
Yeah, that's what they got on the extrapolation.
Yeah, wait, let me just try.
So that means it's a more intense system than actually looks like.
I don't know what that means. I've never seen anything like it. Let me go and show you this.
Oh yeah, I see it. On these strong winds where it's 45 knots, it says 992.6.
992.6 down there in the strongest winds, when usually you get the lowest pressure, well, always in the calmest area, which they got further north there, 996.7. That's secondary low, but certainly with the pressure envelope looking like that, it suggests at least that we've got possibly two competing centers here.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, this is a very interesting twist here, and I'm not sure what the NHC are going to make of that.
I am so confused right now.
Me
what
too.
am I
I'm
missing?
awfully confused by this.
I am so confused.
I don't know what the deal is with that, but it looks like there are two competing centers. Either that, or it's the only other thing I can think of is that it's a glitch in the data, but I don't think so. NHC will come up with their update, and surely they'll be able to figure it out as we get towards the 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time advisory.
The Fujiwara effect by
No.
circulations in the storm.
Now, sometimes you can get mesovortices that can have slightly lower pressures around an eye or center region, but the area, it's not really a mesovortice. The area in the center where the calm winds are, that's where the center has been, but possibly signs of a center relocation, which would be southeast of the current center, which I guess buys it a little bit more time, a couple of hours.
I hope it's not that, because then if it is a different change of location of the center, then that can change the whole track.
But yes, in short, confusion. R Delta, thanks very much for your support once again today. I know you've been around for a while. Howdy all from Arkansas, and appreciating our keen meteorological insight and discussion. Well, that's what we're here for, and we do our best with that. And Bellany PH, or Bellin F, welcome to Category 1. Thanks for becoming a member. And feel free to send in some more questions as we continue to wait for the National Hurricane Center advisory. But right now, we're just trying to make head or tail of this Recon data, which suggests a much deeper pressure peak inside the strongest winds on the southeastern side of the center. It's extremely confusing, and I don't know what the actual answer is. But hopefully the National Hurricane Center can shed some light on that. One of those rare occasions with no idea what's going on. The update is out. They've gone with 60 miles per hour and a pressure of 997 millibars. And yes, despite those stronger winds on the southeast side, it still only supports 60 miles per hour. And they're calling for now explicitly at least, a 75 knot peak before it makes landfall, and then moving inland, weakening substantially. So on the face of it, it looks like they've gone for a slight lowering of the peak intensity, but I want to add a caveat to that. I expect that there will be a midpoint between that 75 knot and the 50 knot after it makes landfall, where it could still reach that 80 knot peak, 90 miles per hour. So update there from the officials. And tropical storm warning issued for portions of the western Gulf Coast now. They have issued a tropical storm warning for Mexico and Texas, for the northeastern coast from Barra El Miquital to the mouth of the Rio Grande. And they've discontinued the hurricane watch for that area, so they've just replaced it basically with a tropical storm warning, and a tropical storm warning for Texas south of Baffin Bay to the mouth of the Rio Grande River. I'm not sure exactly where Baffin Bay is. I assume that's still quite far south. So tropical storm warning issued for Baffin Bay to the mouth of the Rio Grande in Texas. No other changes. Storm surge watch for the Texas coast from the mouth of the Rio Grande River northward to High Island. We'll get a graphical depiction of the forecast shortly. Little change in strength is expected today, is what they're saying. However, strengthening is expected to begin tonight or on Sunday, and Beryl is forecast to become a hurricane before it reaches the Texas coast. Tropical storm force winds, they're saying, extend outwards up to 125 miles from the centre, and they've got a minimum central pressure then of 997 millibars. Looking at the surge expectations, we're looking at 3 to 5 feet for Baffin Bay to San Luis Pass, 3 to 5 feet for Corpus Christi Bay, 3 to 5 feet for Matagorda Bay, mouth of the Rio Grande to Baffin Bay, which is where that warning's now been issued, 2 to 4 feet, San Luis Pass to High Island, 2 to 4 feet, and Galveston Bay, 2 to 4 feet. Heavy rainfall of 5 to 10 inches with localized amounts of 15 expected across portions of the Texas Gulf Coast and eastern Texas beginning late Sunday through the middle of next week. The rainfall will likely produce areas of flash and urban flooding, some of which will be locally considerable. Let's see if we can get their discussion. We can. I'll read this out. It's quite a long blurb though. Recently, a convective burst has developed near the center of Beryl in the northwestern quadrant. That's what we're seeing here. And the low-level center is, for the moment, no longer exposed. Nearly, but still not quite. Tail Doppler radar data from the NOAA aircraft suggests that the cyclone has become better aligned vertically during the last few hours, likely due to the effects of this burst. Reports from both NOAA and Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft show that central pressure is now near 997, with the Air Force plane reporting severe turbulence in the convection. The initial intensity remains 50 knots for this advisory based on the flight level and SFMR wind data from the two aircraft. Initial motion is 300 degrees, which is still west-northwest at 10 knots, which is only 12 miles per hour. Water vapor imagery shows a developing mid-latitude trough over the central United States that is opening a break in the subtropical ridge over Texas. Beryl is expected to turn northwest later today and then turn northward by 48 to 60 hours into the break, with the center making landfall on the Texas coast. Recurvature to the northeast subsequently expected after 72 hours. The forecast guidance has not changed much since the previous advisory, and the new forecast track is basically an update of the previous track. There it is on the screen now. The new track lies between the main consensus models and a HCCA corrected consensus model. Beryl remains in an area of about 15 knots of southerly vertical shear, and water vapor imagery shows mid to upper level dry air over the southern semicircle of the cyclone. This combination suggests the possibility that the current convective burst will weaken later today. After 24 hours, the shear is forecast to diminish, and the intensity guidance is in good agreement that significant strengthening should occur. Based on this, the intensity forecast shows only modest strengthening during the first 24 hours, followed by intensification to hurricane strength before landfall in Texas. The peak intensity is based on the HWRF, HMON, HAFSA, and HAFSB. We'd looked at all of those before. After landfall, Beryl is expected to weaken, with the system forecast to decay to a remnant low pressure area by 120 hours. Still uncertainty in the forecast, but they are calling for that landfall to occur very close to, in fact it is still quite close to Rockport, just east of Rockport on Matagorda Island. But at this rate, they are now calling for a 85 mile per hour peak before making landfall. It could still squeeze 90 just in there, although if it does strengthen more than expected, of course, it's always a possibility. If it starts to rapidly intensify, could still get to Category 2 plus status. But that tropical storm warning now issued up to Baffin Bay, which is along the coast there. If I'm not mistaken, Baffin Bay is east of the town of Riviera out towards Padre Island, just south of Corpus Christi, where we have the division between Kleberg County and trying to figure out what the county south of there is, Kennedy County. So that's what we're expecting. A Category 1 peak still on the cards from the National Hurricane Center, although chances are slowly starting to decrease that we're going to see a much more powerful storm, which of course was our first concern. But Category 1 on the forecast, decent agreement for models, could still get Cat 2. Once again, the update on that on those warnings. Mexico has basically changed their hurricane watch area to a tropical storm warning from Barra El Mezquital to the mouth of the Rio Grande, and the tropical storm warning extending up to Baffin Bay. There's still a hurricane watch for that area as well in Texas. They haven't dropped that. It is a tropical storm warning as well as a hurricane watch in case things go south, in more ways than one. Well, Beryl really blowing up that large amount of convection near the center, but from the National Hurricane Center, they believe that it's possible that that convection could weaken again later. They got an eye drop sond here. Let's see if we can bring that to you. They got 999 millibars with a wind of 12 knots. They still didn't explain though that really low pressure on the southeastern side, which was very unusual. Sounds like they put it down to turbulence, and that well, they've discounted it, haven't they? Otherwise they would have gone for like 994 at the update. They went 997, and that was based on that extrapolated 996 point something in the center. So they've disregarded that southeastern side. Turbulence is what they described it as being. So that's Beryl. Still a 60 mile per hour tropical storm with updates on this throughout the day. Thoughts from our team then, and these will be final thoughts before we finish up on this storm and that advisory. Open floor.
I just feel like we should still watch the storm, even if it does become slightly weaker than what we expected. This still could have the potential to intensify, and realize this system, don't underestimate this system, not because it's Beryl, but because it's in an environment where a lot of different scenarios could happen. Of course, it is unlikely now for those stronger scenarios to occur, but just be open-minded towards those stronger scenarios. Just be aware, but don't prepare for them.
Now, of course, at the start of the stream, we were comparing it to Harvey in some ways. The rapid intensification that Harvey did, of course, was a massive anomaly. We certainly don't expect that, and it's a different situation. The National Hurricane Center have said as much, really. They're really only saying that they're not expecting strengthening until late tonight. By that point, the storm should be quite a bit further north than where Harvey started rapidly intensifying, so it certainly appears as though it won't get as strong as that. And we wouldn't be talking about Harvey at all if it wasn't for Beryl's previous history. We know what Beryl's like. Realistically, though, our best estimate, and the risk of jinxing it once again, is that we expect that the storm will only in inverted commas get to Category 1 status, but it is still going to be a hurricane. That is still quite dangerous and powerful. Storm surge and flash flooding possible as it moves inland Monday. Any other words from our team quickly? Nah. Cesar, part of Mexico tropical storm warning now. I think your mic is off.
He's unmuted.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry. Excuse me. I was saying that I mean, despite the tropical storm warning in some parts in the eastern coast of Mexico, northeastern coast of Mexico, I highly doubt that we'll see any kind of tropical storm effect, since the storm is quite small and is moving more to the northwest, heading Texas. Possibly they could get some rain bands, but not really tropical storm effects, fortunately. But
And the
let's see what
coast there
happens.
is quite sparse, isn't it, really, in northeastern Mexico?
It is. It's not a very high populated area as well, so that's good news too. And I think really the main threat is going to be the cities in the southern coast of Texas. I don't think Mexico will get any kind of tropical storm effects at all.
Wow, that's a bold claim after they just issued those TS warnings. Well, obviously still look out for it there on that northeastern coast. But thanks to the team for taking part in another live event here, and to you for watching. Of course, a lot of people do it out of necessity. We understand that. But we'll be back again soon. We'll have another live event tonight as we continue to watch this storm. Stay tuned to social media for further details on that as we get closer. And we'll probably have some more updates on our channels as well. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll be back again later today. This is Tropical Storm Beryl, still at 60 miles per hour. And myself, Nathan Foy, and the team signing off.